I can still hear the sound of the engine sputtering as I coasted to a stop, the cold desert air cutting through the cracks in the windows. The headlights barely illuminated anything past the hood of the car, and the only thing that surrounded me was darkness. Endless, suffocating darkness. I had thought I was prepared for everything on this trip, but nothing could have prepared me for what came next. It was supposed to be an easy road trip, just me and my old Subaru heading down a stretch of highway I'd never driven before. A last-minute detour off the main road. I'd been feeling adventurous, excited even, as I passed through sleepy towns and endless stretches of open desert. I didn't mind the isolation. In fact, I craved it, but something about that night felt off, even from the start. It wasn't just the odd feeling I had when I stopped for gas in that rundown town. Everything had seemed just a little too quiet, but I brushed it off. After all, it was a small, almost forgotten place in the middle of nowhere. Nothing strange ever happens there, right? At least that's what I thought until I saw it, the shadow. It was brief at first, just a flicker in the distance, barely visible over the horizon. I thought maybe I was imagining it, so I shook it off. But as the night went on, I kept seeing it out of the corner of my eye. Something moving out there, shifting in and out of the darkness. My headlights kept catching on the empty stretch of road, but no matter how hard I looked, I couldn't make out anything solid. Then the car stalled. The engine shut off, and the strange silence was deafening. I tried starting the car again. Nothing. My heart raced. This was not supposed to happen. I was far from the nearest town with no cell service, and only a lonely stretch of highway around me. That's when I saw the footprints. Or at least I think they were footprints. They led away from the side of the road, deep into the brush where no one could have possibly walked without being seen. And as my eyes adjusted to the dark, I realized the shape of something standing not far from me. A figure, tall, thin, motionless. I froze, my breath caught in my chest. I couldn't tear my eyes away from that figure, despite every instinct telling me to look away, to get back in the car and drive. But I didn't move, couldn't. The figure was standing perfectly still, as if it had been there for hours or longer. The only thing I could see clearly was its outline, tall and unnaturally thin, its shape almost distorted in the dim light. I tried to convince myself it was just a trick of the light, some illusion created by the desert. But I knew better. The way the figure didn't move, the way it seemed almost to be waiting, it felt wrong. I reached for the car door, but my hands were shaking so badly I couldn't get a proper grip. Finally, I yanked the handle and jumped back inside, locking the door behind me. For a moment, I just sat there, staring out the window, my breath coming in short, frantic bursts. But the figure didn't move, stood motionless, as if it was watching me. A strange chill spread through the car, making the air feel heavy and thick. I turned on the engine, desperately trying to start it up again. Nothing. The engine just gave a few weak sputters before falling silent once more. Panic began to set in. I reached into the glove compartment for a flashlight, but my hand shook so violently that it took a few tries before I grabbed hold of it. I flicked it on and shone it out the window. The beam swept across the road, but the figure was gone. There was nothing but empty, desolate landscape. Relieved, I took a deep breath, trying to calm myself. Maybe I had imagined it. Maybe the darkness was playing tricks on my mind. But as I sat there, alone in the car, the feeling of being watched didn't go away. It felt as if something, or someone, was out there, just beyond my line of sight. Then came the sound. At first, I thought it was a wild animal, something scraping along the ground. But then it started to get louder, sharper. The sound was unmistakable. Footsteps. Slow, deliberate footsteps coming closer. I froze, my heart pounding so hard I thought it might burst from my chest. I had no idea where the figure had gone, but now I was certain. I wasn't alone. The footsteps grew louder, closer. I held my breath, straining my ears to catch every sound. There was a rhythm to them, slow, calculated, as if the person knew exactly where I was. I pressed my back into the seat, trying to make myself as small as possible, not daring to make a sound. The flashlight in my hand trembled, casting erratic beams of light that only made the darkness feel even deeper. Then, without warning, the car rocked. Just a slight movement, but enough to make me jump. I swung the flashlight around, but saw nothing. No one was in sight. The footsteps had stopped. I sat there for what felt like an eternity, staring out the window, my hand clutching the flashlight so tightly that my knuckles were white. I didn't know what to do. I had no cell service. My car was dead, and I was in the middle of nowhere. I thought about getting out, but the idea of stepping into that pitch-black desert, knowing that someone or something was out there, was enough to paralyze me with fear. Suddenly, a thump came from the roof of the car. I froze again, my heart skipping a beat. The thump was followed by another. Then another, like something heavy was dragging across the roof, inching closer to the windshield. The sound was unmistakable. Someone or something was up there. I couldn't take it anymore. Panic surged through me, and I scrambled for the keys, trying to start the car again. My hands fumbled. I was about to turn the key when I heard a voice. A whisper. It was low, so faint that at first, I thought it was just the wind. But then I heard it again, clearer this time. "You're not supposed to be here." The words sent a chill down my spine. My eyes darted around the car, searching for any sign of movement. I was alone. I had to be. I hadn't seen anyone get close. And yet, the voice had sounded so real, so close, that it could have been coming from right outside my window. I looked back at the roof. Whatever was there, it wasn't moving anymore. But I knew it was still there, watching. I couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. The air felt too thick, too oppressive, and the silence was deafening. I tried to gather my wits, but my mind was racing, too frantic to focus. The engine was still dead. My flashlight was growing dim, and my hands were slick with sweat. I needed to get out of there. I knew I couldn't just sit in the car forever, but every instinct screamed at me to stay put, to wait for daylight, if daylight ever came. I took a deep breath, forcing myself to think logically. My phone had no signal, and I was miles away from the nearest town. My best shot was to try and walk to safety. But as I reached for the door handle, something else caught my attention. The whisper came again. This time it was clearer, almost like it was directly in my ear. "Stay inside." I jumped back, heart racing. My mind screamed at me to open the door, to get out and run. But the voice held me in place, a strange, invisible force keeping me rooted to the spot. My pulse thundered in my ears as I stared out of the car window, trying to make out any movement in the dark. That's when I saw it. A figure. It wasn't standing still this time. It was moving toward me. The same tall, thin shape I had seen earlier, now moving slowly but deliberately through the desert brush. Its movements were jerky, unnatural, like it was gliding rather than walking. Couldn't look away. Every instinct in me screamed to drive away, to get out of there. But I couldn't. I was paralyzed by fear. As the figure got closer, I saw its face, or rather, what should have been a face. It was a smooth, featureless surface, like someone had peeled away everything that made it human. No eyes, no nose, no mouth. Just smooth, pale skin stretched over an empty skull. I gasped, my breath coming in shallow bursts. The figure didn't stop. It didn't even seem to notice me, but I could feel its presence, like it was drawing closer with every passing second. I knew I had to act, but I couldn't. My legs felt like lead, and my hands were shaking so badly that I couldn't even turn the key in the ignition. Then, a knock. A sharp, bone-rattling knock on my window. I froze. The knock echoed in my ears like a drumbeat, each one louder than the last. My breath caught in my throat, and my heart hammered in my chest, nearly deafening me. The knock wasn't just on the window. It was coming from all around the car, rhythmic and deliberate, as if whoever or whatever was outside was testing the boundaries of my fear. I dared not look, but my hands betrayed me, slowly moving towards the window, fingers trembling as if they had a mind of their own. I couldn't stop myself. I peered out, just enough to catch a glimpse of what was there. The figure was standing right by the window. Its featureless face was inches from the glass, staring into the car. The air in the vehicle seemed to freeze, and I couldn't breathe, couldn't move. It just stood there, silent and still, as if waiting for something. My mind raced, trying to make sense of what was happening. There was no way I was imagining this. This wasn't a dream. This was real. A cold, oppressive wave of dread washed over me. I couldn't tell if the thing outside could hear my thoughts, but it felt like it could, as if it knew every terrified beat of my heart. Then, without warning, the knocking stopped. The figure took a step back. I let out a shaky breath, but I didn't have time to feel relief. The ground beneath me seemed to shift, like the earth itself was unsettled, quivering. I grabbed the flashlight and pointed it at the road, desperate to see something, anything, that might offer some kind of explanation. The beam swept over the empty desert, the distant brush, the vast nothingness surrounding me. And that's when I saw it. A pair of glowing eyes, low to the ground, reflecting the light. I froze again, the hairs on the back of my neck standing up. The eyes blinked, slowly, deliberately, like it knew I was watching. I could barely make out the shape of the creature they belonged to. An animal? No, it was too tall, too unnatural. The eyes locked on mine, and then the sound came again. The soft, almost inaudible whisper, as if it was speaking directly into my mind. Stay. The voice wasn't human. It was cold, hollow, and yet it felt almost familiar. The whisper echoed in my skull, sending a wave of ice-cold fear coursing through my veins. I had no idea what was happening anymore. My mind raced, but my body felt frozen, incapable of moving. The eyes, those glowing, unnatural eyes, kept staring at me, unblinking. It was as if the creature was waiting for me to do something, to make a move. But all I could do was sit there, paralyzed in terror. The creature's form slowly emerged from the shadows. It was tall, too tall, its limbs unnaturally long and angular. It didn't seem to have a shape, more like a twisted silhouette, a vague impression of something vaguely human. Its movements were jerky, twitching as if it didn't quite belong in this world. I couldn't take it anymore. My hand, almost on its own, reached for the door handle, and I flung the door open, the cold desert wind hitting me like a slap in the face. I had no plan, no clear idea of what I was doing. But I knew one thing: I had to get away. I had to run. I stumbled out of the car, tripping over rocks and debris, my breath ragged, my heart racing like it was about to burst from my chest. I turned, glancing back at the car, but the creature was gone. The eyes, those damned eyes, were no longer there. I didn't look back. I ran, forcing my legs to carry me faster than I thought possible. Every step felt like it took me further into the unknown, deeper into the dark, endless desert. But the whisper, it followed me. Stay. The voice was everywhere now. Inside my head, around me, a constant presence. It wasn't real. I knew that. But in that moment, it felt as if the very air itself was alive, suffocating me with its presence. I didn't stop. I ran until I thought I couldn't go any further, until my legs gave out and I collapsed into the dirt. My breath came in frantic gasps as I lay there, staring up at the vast, starless sky. The darkness seemed to press in from all sides, and for a brief moment, I thought I might not survive this. But then, just as suddenly as it had started, the whispers stopped. The world fell silent again. I don't know how long I lay there, but when I finally got back to my feet, the night was still. The creature was gone. The car was gone. The desert stretched out before me, empty and silent. My phone was still dead, but somehow I found the strength to walk. I don't know what happened out there. I don't know what I saw, but I know this, whatever it was, it wanted me to stay. And I almost did. I'm still not sure if I made it out of there by luck, or if someone, let me go. But I survived. And now I can't forget. Every night, I feel those eyes watching me from the darkness. They're still out there. And sometimes, when I close my eyes, I hear the whisper, stay. Did you like these stories? Write in the comments. And please write what you didn't like. It will be useful for me to know your opinion. and I will improve my work. Thank you. Subscribe to my channel and click the bell so as not to miss new stories. I try for you.